Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us on this cold and dark December evening for International Migrants Day. My name is Nathan Mannion, and I'm the Senior Curator here at EPIC, the Irish Immigration Museum in Dublin. We're delighted to partner with the International Office of Migration here in Ireland to bring you the Global Migration Film Festival this year. I'd like to hand over to Lilani Versassi, who is the head of mission for IOM in Ireland, who'll give us a lovely warm introduction to tonight's program. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nathan, and a very warm welcome to everyone. Lord Mayor, it's an honor to have you on the call today and on this very special day of the International Migrants Day. So happy Migrants Day to everyone. And glad to have also the colleagues from EPIC who've co-hosting this event with us. Colleagues from IOM Geneva, Leonard Doyle, thank you very much for taking the time to be with us as well. And Sharose, who we've never met, but we'll have the chance to exchange as well after the movie. And a very warm welcome again to everyone who's joining today. It's a real pleasure to organize this event on this special day. As I said, it's a special day, it's a special year, as we all know. It's been very challenging. We've learned a lot from all sides of being able to work together, of understanding what challenges we can go through. And I think the theme of the International Migrants Day this year, reimagining human mobility, is really an interesting one. It really makes you think about what does it mean to reimagine what human mobility can be, because it touches so many and affects so many characteristics and scale of migration. and and I think it's been, as I said, it's been so challenging and so interesting to see how the issue of migration and migrants have been tackled this year, from the of course the contributions that migrants have played in society and in the response of COVID, but also some of the reactions, unfortunately, that we have seen, the xenophobic reactions in some areas of the world, which unfortunately is a reality and that we'll also have the chance to discuss about. Um, it's also a really, really interesting time for us because we're also celebrating at the same time, which we've celebrated since 2016, this Global Migration Film Festival. What is it about? We'll have Leonard maybe exchange a bit more with us. What's that Global Migration Film Festival all about? But all these films that we're showcasing with EPIC and with the Retro Cinema Drive-In this week, it really helps us to share as much knowledge, share as much information, as much stories with you, so that we can really understand what it really means to be a migrant, what it really means, a migration journey, and all the opportunities and challenges that it also brings. So I'll stop there. We have three very powerful short movies today, this evening, that we'll be showing you very shortly. And we'll have the chance to also discuss about them in a very short panel. The first short movie, which we actually produced with Heavy Man Films, based in Galway, is called I Would Never, with 3 dots. And I won't actually introduce it because it's such a very strong piece. I think you will really enjoy it, even it's a very short but very strong piece. We'll move then immediately towards a second movie, which is called Our Only Home. And the third piece, which again, it's a very local piece, which we're launching today with the Lord Mayor, is called Drive It In. Again, this was a very new word for me, but I don't think it's going to be as new for you because it's supposedly a very GAA terminology. But I'll let you discover these films, and I would like to seize this opportunity to thank Sharose as well for accepting to be part of this film. I won't give you all the surprises of these films. So without further ado, over to Nathan and the team from EPIC. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lilani. We will just start our screening now. 1 second.
Racial microaggressions are more than just insensitive comments. They are painful reminders of negative stereotypes. They happen casually in everyday life and often without any harm intended. They are so subtle that they can be almost invisible, but powerful enough to have a serious impact on people's mental health.
You must tan really well.
You don't talk like you're black.
Did you get to pick your own wife?
When I look at you, I don't see colour.
Your English is
Your
very
English is
good.
very good. How long are you here for? How do you find the cold?
Where are you from?
Are you a nurse?
I loved Slumdog Millionaire.
Don't you guys
Where are you from?
When I look at you, I don't
talk like black.
I believe the most qualified person to get the job.
Why are you so quiet?
Can you read my lips?
I'm talking you're black.
Where are you from? You understand?
Do you understand what I am saying?
Let us speak words that can include, embrace, and help everyone feel stronger and united.
Let us not use words that can degrade or belittle people.
Let's be one.
And one together.
together.
Moving to Ireland, I suppose, looking back at it, is a bit daunting. My dad or my mum that moved over, they gave up everything, I suppose, for myself and my brother, so we'd have a good life and a good future and good education. When we first came over, having no English, the language barrier initially was a bit scary going into school, not being able to communicate. My dad wouldn't have the best English, so trying to get jobs for him was difficult. Difficulties like that would have played a massive part in the family. People that have grown up here, I think, take that for granted. When you're a child, you don't know any better when somebody's being racist or not. Most of the community was really welcoming, but you always have that small minority. You'd be walking down the street as a child, minding your own business, going to a shop, and you'd have somebody across the road racially abusing you just because of the colour of your skin. GAA, I suppose, has been a big part of my life from the latter part of my primary school years. My first, I suppose, attraction to GAA was the social aspect. All I wanted to do was hang out with my friends, and that was the only time I suppose I could do it outside of school. Describing my life for the last 20 years is difficult. There's a few moments that stand out for me. Completing my Leaving Cert and getting to third level education, that was a big part for my family. I got my undergrad in sports science and health, and now I'm studying a master's in business and entrepreneurship. Where I am right now in my life, sport has played a massive part. Me as a person, to grow, to meet the people that I have met. The assistance I have got and my family have got, I think has come from sports as well. And then lastly, my business.
Me and Shiro started our own business, and we haven't really been inseparable since then. The first time I met Shiroz, I had just moved school in 6th class, and Shiroz is in the year below me. There was obviously a rivalry on the football field at lunchtimes. I met him through that, so we were clashing at the start, and then I think we became friends from there.
Dad was the only one that worked in the family. Mostly he wasn't around to bring me to games and stuff as much as he would have liked to. So I think that's where Keane's family really stood in, between bringing me to trainings, games, the county soccer. So Andy would have done a lot of the taxing then, for which I'm very grateful.
So moving home from Australia, I've really struggled, and him kind of helped me settle back in. He's obviously had his ups and downs, but he still comes in with a smile on his face, helping other people, and he's really kind of rubbed that attitude off on me the last couple of years. So I'm really grateful to have him as a friend and for him to be a big part of my life. When I first moved to Australia, there was definitely days where I felt that I didn't really belong. It puts Shiroz's perspective into a way bigger picture.
On the sports side of things, I've had a few racist incidences as well. One I can distinctly remember was in a club. My friends and teammates really stood up for me, which was brilliant to know that you actually mean something to them and you're actually a big part of what they believe in. And then I got to know him, and he apologised to me, and we became friends. People say things at the heat of the moment and they don't realise it can actually hurt somebody's feelings. Being the first Pakistani to win an All-Ireland, I think that's something that people look up to me for, but I just look at that as an achievement. Like the rest of the guys on the team, to win an All-Ireland was a success in itself. People are beginning to see the other cultures are coming in and play a part of the Ireland that's going to be in the future. I think people are getting to see a glimpse of it now. Other cultures coming into the country only add to it. Nobody's really taking away from anything. So integration works both ways. For somebody to get integrated into a local society, they have to be open and willing to get involved with the local people, local sports clubs. On the other hand, you need people to welcome them into the place. So you can't have people just looking them up and down or, you know, being restrictive in what they're allowed to do or participate in. If somebody asked me, where are you from? I'd say Ireland. I wouldn't say I'm Pakistani. My whole life has been here. Anything that I know in life has been here. I can read and write English and Irish. I can't even read and write my own language, so that to me is Irish. Playing the national sport, again, that's something that incorporated with Irish people.
Other towns getting in touch saying, we want him to come out and really give us a good talk, because people look up to him. I think that kind of speaks for itself. They all see Shahrose as an idol. I think Shahrose, how he's integrated himself into the community is a credit to himself, and it's incredible what he's achieved and what he's doing.
Thank you very much. I really trust you appreciated these three very different, but at the same time very common themes that come up through the three short movies. I personally was very touched when we also produced the first two, the first and the third, because the second one has been produced by a producer called Kubilay, and a Turkish producer. It really resonated for me because, again, I think we can all associate ourselves somehow with having traveled so much or having met with different cultures, having lived in different countries. I myself, when you look at me, you would think, or I would very regularly have this comment, oh, are you from India? Because I obviously look Indian, but obviously I'm not. I'm from Mauritius and I don't speak Hindi and I don't speak Tamil and I speak Mauritian Creole. So this issue of identity or the sense of belonging based on a specific land where you've grown up, language that you've acquired, and an environment that you've interacted with, is very important and really important to also share that knowledge and share facts and evidence of who we are, all of us. And I wanted to make this link also with this really interesting initiative that we're launching today called the Global Migration Media Academy, which really help us all, I think, and help journalists and reporters, namely, to really look at the ways and ethical ways of reporting on migrants and migration. This story about Shahrose, and I'd like to thank Shahrose because it was very interesting how I got in touch with you through LinkedIn, and you probably thought, who's this crazy lady getting in touch with me? But it really showcases the contribution that you've made in the GAA, Shahrose, and I think this is really important, is to really show the reality and the facts and the evidence of what you've done within your own society, your own family, and within an entire country and a whole sports, which is a very famous sport from what I understand. I've just been here for 1 year, but I'll definitely get into GAA very shortly as well. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome again the panelists and above all the Lord Mayor Hazel Chu, who has taken the time, it's a very busy time, I know, taking the time to be with us and actually support the preparation and the production of these two films, local films. So I'd like to thank you, Lord Mayor, for this. You've been extremely active in the field of really to push on the and emphasize on the importance of the integration of all communities, not just migrants, but all minorities and all communities in the city of Dublin, but at large in Ireland. I know yourself, you've been also one of the first persons of Chinese descent to be part of different settings, including the Dole, and you'll correct me, and you'll probably give more details on your experience as well. But very grateful to have you. You have, I think, not just insights, but a lot of also great ideas that you want to take forward, especially in the context of your forthcoming integration strategy. Leonard Doyle, of course, is a very dear friend and colleague from IOM Geneva. He's the head of the Media Communications Unit. He also happens to be Irish. And I'll pass the floor to him after the Lord Mayor. And I'd like to welcome also again Shiroz, and thank again Nathan, who will be also speaking on the panel and sharing his thoughts. But over to you, Lord Mayor, for your insights. We're very curious and very, very interested to know what you've thought of these films, and just overall you're thinking about this important issues today of integration, identity, and this just sense of belonging and the importance of reporting on migrants and migration. So over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Nalini. I have to say the movies were great. The films were great. I particularly liked the GAO one. So well done, Shiroz, and well done everyone involved in it. I guess, like, as much as I think Dublin's going to win on Sunday, and like we shouldn't be really having a conversation about Mayo and GAA, but that's fine. So like, I was going to ask which flag you were going to fly for, but I know now. But no, it was great to see. But it also, I think it shows how important integration and inclusion is in society. Nini just asked her, like, pointed to the fact that what makes us feel who we are and a sense of identity and belonging. I would have, my parents come from Hong Kong. I speak Cantonese. I look like them. However, whenever I go back to Hong Kong, people would say I'm a banana because I'm yellow on the outside and white on the inside to them. And then when I'm here, every single day, someone tells me I'm not Irish, online, or actually mainly online, they tell me that these days. And then the whole discussion is what makes someone Irish, or in my case, everyone goes, well, you, it's not just because of, it's not just you have a birth cert or that you're born here. It's not that you speak a language. And the thing is, I do get asked that, and I think everyone does get asked that, and the panelists here would have been asked many a times, as Nanina has said, like, where are you from, or what makes you who you are in terms of identity and nationality. And I got asked that yesterday on radio, actually, and the interviewer actually just said, listen, what's the guidelines? What makes someone feel who they are or belong to a certain country? And there is none. That's the thing. I love to say we have a set box criteria. And I was thinking about this for ages, because for years, like during my teenage and adulthood, early adulthood, I kept on saying, if I had a box and of items and points of what makes me Irish, or what makes someone British, or what makes, it wouldn't be great, because then I can provide these answers and then have and be able to argue them. But then, as I, especially in recent years, actually in the last year particularly, when someone asked me, well, what's your explanations, or like how do you fit the criteria, or what's the criteria, I have come to the stage where I just think, well, for me, there is none. So there is no box, because once you start boxing it and insisting those are the criteria you have to meet, then you are immediately applying the rule that you're not going to be inclusive, because if you don't meet A, B, C, D, you're not then part of you're not part of Ireland, you're not part of UK, or etc. And people might go, well, Hazel, that's a bit much that you're not going to apply any rules, but why should there be? If someone is willing to move to a country, to uproot themselves for whatever reasons, be it for safety, be it for economic reasons, they are leaving what was their previous home to try to make themselves a better lives. Then how is it up to us to determine a criteria to then say whether they belong or not? And whether they should have that sense of identity that is fitting to the country. That sense of identity is developed by themselves. So my sense of identity and affinity to Ireland goes beyond my birth cert and goes beyond my passport. It goes to the fact that, well, it's been my home, but it also goes to a million different reasons. So, and people would go, well, what about shared history? You don't have the history or historical kind of reference of your generations and family here. Christ, like my family come from Hong Kong, who was which is a country that did not belong to themselves for quite a long period of time. It still doesn't belong to themselves. And if you look at Irish history, it's the same. It did not belong. I'm not going to go to whose fault and what country dominated, but that sense of shared history, of oppression, of fighting for freedom, we feel it across the world in every state, in every way. And to say, well, you don't have a shared history, that's not true either. And then I look at people argue the whole, well, our forefathers fought for this independence, blah blah. And I get that. I get the national stance of, well, this is the pride. But if you're going to come and claim that, then read the Proclamation of Independence properly and go to the third or fourth paragraph where it says, cherish all children in the state equally. So, and we work on those factors and realize, well, migration is not a bad thing. Migrants in our society is definitely not a bad thing. And if anything, the multiculturalism of a state adds to it. It adds to it in terms of how we think better, work better, or create better in terms of a community. Shiroz, I'm not putting words in your mouth, but chances are he'll go back and volunteer with the GAA if he's not already, and he's again creating a new wave of players and helping out, and it's all part of being a network and community, and it builds for better communities. It's why it's been so important for me in my role to make sure that we have integration and inclusion, and it's not just a tick box, because everyone talks about diversity and we talk about how, oh, we have to have diversity, and it becomes a bit of a tick box. So in the actual work form, I will be starting an integration strategy for DCC coming in January. I've already, actually one of the meetings today was kicking it off. I needed to make sure we wrapped up on the homeless task force for the Lord Mayor's office before we moved on to the integration strategy of DCC. And what we wanted to do is make sure that it's from the ground up, that it's built from the community upwards, that it will benefit my daughter, who is now 3, it will benefit Shiroz and his mates. It will benefit Nanini's children if they are staying here. And it goes from not just the sports section, but the housing section, to the library section, to the fire department, to make sure that every section of DCC has that lens of integration and inclusion, that people don't just look at people who are different, be it their ethnicity or religion or gender, and they're able to be inclusive, but also serve the people that they are supposed to serve with the inclusivity. I always get that word wrong. So on my part, I'm going to be working, I have been working and will continue to work until my term finishes in June, to make sure we progress what we can in the city and around Ireland in terms of how we become inclusive. But you saw in the videos, it's hard if you don't, if we don't all try to be part of it, because that woman in Tirei, I can't pronounce it, the old lady in the film, reminded me of my granny. Like she reminded me of my granny that traveled from China to Hong Kong, set up a life there, language she was able to have, but it was a life of a migrant. And then for her daughter traveled from Hong Kong to Ireland, and it is hard for people in those circumstances. It's hard. So what supports and what community we can build for them is essential. Sorry for taking so long. So that's me. But well done. It was great. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Lord Mayor. You've said a lot of things, and it would be very difficult for me to summarize, but I think ultimately what you were also relating to is, look, migration and migrants, it's not a new phenomenon. We've been moving for ages. We've been settling down in different settings, and it's just that the debate and the discussion has just been so polarized and so politicized in a way where we now see what a migrant could be in today's world, but it's not a new debate. And the second point, I think, which is really key is, yes, there might be a set of indicators that we look at. You speak a language, you behave a certain way. There's a few indicators that come when you talk about who is Irish, who is a Mauritian, who is a Pakistani. But at the end of the day, there's no need to categorize people. I think as long as we can all coexist together and understand the value added of everyone in the society, I think this is where it works for everyone. And it's not easy. It's definitely not easy. And I really like the scene in the Turkish movie where the person says, well, we're all different. We're at the end of the day, we're actually having tea together. And I like to associate that with food because I love food, but it's the same thing for sports as well, Shiroz. So thank you very much, Hazel, for Lord Mayor, for your insights. I know you'll have to leave around 7:30, so feel free to log off, but I'd like to
another meeting right afterwards. It's not like I'm doing anything fun, so sorry.
No worries, but I'd really like you to maybe stay on for Leonard and the rest if you can, but again, feel free to log off when you can. But I'd like to pass the floor to Leonard, who has been extremely involved in this debate, and actually the mind behind the setting up of this Global Media and Migration Academy, which we launched today together. So Leonard, being Irish, working for IOM, having such an experience working as a journalist, but also working in different settings with IOM, in Haiti, in the headquarters. We've traveled also in Djibouti. You've seen the world, Leonard. So what are your thoughts and what are your impressions also of these movies that we're launching today? Over to you.
Thanks so much, Lily, and such a pleasure to be here. It's an absolute honor. And let me just say at the outset, I'm completely bowled over by the movies and by the panel. And it's such an honor to meet the Lord Mayor virtually, and I'm kind of thrilled, really. When you sent me Shiroz's movie, Drive It Home or Drive It In, the other day, I told you, and it's true, it brought me to tears. I mean, this is just exactly what we need to help Irish people understand that we are richer when people join us. I'm just going to tell you a story which I don't share very often. When I worked for the Independent, UK Independent, many years ago, I was proposed as the correspondent in Brussels. And I was looking forward to that. And then one of the toffs running the show had lunch with the foreign editor, and the word came back, oh, it's not going to happen. We can't possibly have a Mick in Brussels. Now, that story applies to everybody we're talking about today. It's all about prejudice, it's all about perception, and it's actually nonsense. The best person you want in Brussels is a Mick, because they're the people who talk to people, who network, and who have no barriers. So we need to understand each other, we need to hear from each other, and we need to understand these amazing stories we're hearing tonight. Let me just move quickly to, you asked me to talk a little bit about the Migration Film Festival. This is something we cooked up we dreamt up over a pizza in Geneva one night when we thought, like, where are we getting with drilling into people's heads that migration is a positive thing? We're not getting very far because people react emotionally. And we sort of thought, well, where people listen is through movies. There's a reason that Hollywood is wealthy and Bollywood is doing fine and Nollywood is doing even better. It's because people respond to stories. So that's the reason we came up with this notion of the Migration Film Festival, because people respond to stories. And what I will just like people to take away tonight is it's often attributed to Leo Tolstoy. It might be Dostoevsky. It could be anybody. We don't know who said it. But there's a great saying, which is that there are only two stories in the world. There are only two stories. Somebody went on a journey, or a stranger came to town. And out of these two themes, all of literature arises. And if that's not migration, then I'm not sure what is. So I think we just need a little bit more education, a little bit more sharing of stories, like these amazing stories tonight and these amazing people who are before me. And we'll get a long way, because as we see in Shiraz's movie, there's an enormous openness in Irish society. There's an enormous welcoming, a fundamental DNA of the culture, thanks to its 800 years of brotherhood and friendship, as the Lord Mayor was expressing about indirectly about Hong Kong's brotherhood and friendship story. Out of that comes kind of an openness to people. And I think that's what we need to find in Irish society. We need to find and articulate that and make people proud of it. There's an amazing basic friendliness about the society, which gets interfered with, it gets corrupted by the travails of daily life, by the challenges people face, by the insecurities people face. And if I may just continue just a moment, that's why we have this new campaign, which we're launching today again, along with the wonderful Media Academy. And the campaign is called, surprisingly, it doesn't have the word migrant in it. It's called It Takes a Community. It doesn't say, I am a migrant, migrants are amazing, migrants are exceptional. We know they are. Migrants are heroes. We know that. It says it takes a community, because what we want to do is reassure people and show people that migrants are part of the community. And that's what I think Shiraz's movie really showed. You know, you're part of the community. You're what makes it richer, makes it better. Not least the amazing restaurants of Ireland are so much the better because of the migrants who are there cooking and dreaming up new ways to deal with Irish food and make it really special and interesting. Because curiously, all those years of brotherhood and friendship kind of stripped away a lot of the culture that we needed. You know, I will just tell you straight up, as an Irish person growing up, the food culture was kind of non-existent because it was gone. It was taken away by colonialism. Now it's coming back. So I've probably said too much already, but I will say that this is the most amazing panel, and I'm so proud to be part of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Leonard. Thank you very much. I'd like to pick up on this campaign that we're launching today, which we call It Takes a Community, because I think it links very well with Shiraz's piece, where you mentioned, Shiraz, that it's not just me to make an effort as a migrant. It's not just the host community it's a shared responsibility in a way. It works two ways, as you mentioned it in your film. And there's a common work to be done together. So we'd like to hear from you, Shiraz, very briefly on again, the film, but also your experience, your insights. And what I liked also about you is that you were very blunt in saying, well, I've gone through some difficulties, but I've also experienced extremely rich experiences through sports, through I know you do so many other things as well. So it's a nice balance, also experience that you've gone through and worth sharing. So over to you, Shiraz, for a few words. Thank you.
First of all, thanks, Lalini, for having me on. And like Leonard mentioned, I think the panel on today, Lord Mayor and everyone else here, is just it's an honour for me to be a part of it. So thank you very much for inviting me on. Just in terms of my film, so as you've seen, my story from growing up from being a 4-year-old and then coming over to Ireland, and now I'm 23 years old. So I think a lot of my life has been here in Ireland. I think as the Lord Mayor touched on before, like what makes a person Irish, what makes a person from whatever background they're from, or from whatever country do they belong to. So like in my case, when I'm even talking to people, so I might talk to somebody on the phone, and then when you go and see them, they're like, oh, I wasn't you I'm talking to. So like you associated my voice with an Irish person, but then when you see me, you don't associate me with an Irish person. So I think there's people like that do exist. But I think the work that yourself, Lalini, and this IOM group and the Lord Mayor mentioned as well, the initiative she's trying to run out, I think a lot of this work is very important to make Ireland more open to cultures and more diversified. And I think, like the example of sport in my case, I think sport has no boundaries and everyone has the common goal. So I think we need to use and utilize sports more to bring people and welcome people into areas.
Thank you, Sharoz. Definitely sports, music, food, all these are ways to actually come together, because this is where you don't see the difference of people. You like the food, you smell it, you like sports, you listen to the music. And this was also what we wanted to showcase in the first very quick short film on microaggressions, because there was a very strong focus on music as well, and arts. So we wish you all the best, Sharoz, and really I can only wish you to continue on the path. I know you're very much involved in so many other things. So definitely keep in touch, because I think there's a lot to share. There's a lot of examples like you, and we should really do more on that. And we're really committed, IOM, to do more with you and with the government. So thank you so much. Very grateful to you, very grateful to Heavy Men Films, who actually did this whole movie and artwork. So I'm very grateful for that. The last panelist, but not the least, is Nathan. Nathan, who I've met last year and was very eager to work with us on the first Global Film Festival that we did in Ireland. So Nathan, as the curator of the Epic Museum, I think it would be really interesting to have your perspective also on the same issue, but also what's interesting with Ireland is that, yes, it's a country of destination where we have around 17, 18% who are foreign born or of different nationalities, but there's also a similar figure of Irish nationals living abroad. And if you have to find a connection of someone who has a link with Ireland, apparently it goes up to even 70 million people from the latest data that I see. So that's incredibly big. But it also shows the same experiences that Irish people have probably lived and experienced in other countries. So we'd like to also have your thoughts and your insights on the film, and also the perspective of an Irish, which probably would be the same, I'm assuming, but a perspective of an Irish person living and living abroad, an Irish diaspora, as we call it. So over to you, Nathan. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Annie, and well done again on a very powerful selection of films tonight. I think it was wonderful. I'm so happy to have seen them. And what you just mentioned there, I think is quite important, and what Leonard touched on as well is the power of the human story as well, as almost as a currency or a commodity that brings people together. As a relatively new museum here in Dublin, we're just over 4 years old, dedicated to telling the story of the 10 million people that have left the island of Ireland over the last 1500 years, and the 70 million strong diaspora that claim Irish heritage around the world. It's a tall order, as you can imagine. But those stories, I think, are really important and they're really worth telling. And they act as a bridge between different communities. So we consider cultural exchange and human mobility to be really at the heart of what we're doing here. We gather, we interpret, and we present and preserve those stories here at the museum. For example, Charisse, if I kept thinking as I was watching your piece about sports and GAA, while you were talking about using the GAA as a national sport in Ireland, and it was for you a way of integrating into the community that you found yourself in, equally abroad, the Irish GAA games are played all around the world. There's over 400 GAA clubs outside of Ireland. So we consider hurling and Gaelic football to be integral parts of the Irish identity, but they go far beyond the shores of this island. You can find GAA clubs in Hong Kong, you can find GAA clubs in Argentina, in South Africa, all over North America, mainland Europe, the entire globe, organized into rather grandly titled county boards. We use the same system. But in many cases, some of the clubs don't actually have any Irish players as well. So it's the skill and the cultural exchange. For example, the South Africa Gaels have no Irish players. Everyone who plays as part of that team is from South Africa. They've just really engaged with the sport and taken it on board, and it's gone beyond a kind of a national or international boundary. That said, they're also cultural hubs for Irish immigrants outside of Ireland. They act as a hub of a network of people who may be looking for work, looking for friendship, looking to integrate. And I think Sharice's friend as well, when he mentioned he'd come back from Australia, that was a really interesting point for me, because it also touched on return migration as well, which is something that we need to bear in mind, that even people who may be from Ireland and have left for a life overseas and come back to Ireland, it isn't as easy as just slotting back into the life you led before you may have left. You need help and you need allyship, and that sense of community, which was provided there in Mayo, I think is really important that we can make reference to that as well. That said as well, the Irish diaspora, 70 million strong, but it's not a uniform entity. Every single person within that is unique. They have their own stories. The cultural experience of somebody living in New York City is very different than somebody living in Sydney or in Buenos Aires, or Hong Kong or Berlin. And the histories and the unique histories of each group as well is quite varied. And so is the hybridity of identity as well, that we don't just exist as an Irish immigrant or a member of the Irish diaspora. We may also be a member of an Italian diaspora. We may be also a member of a Chinese diaspora. And they don't exist. These identities aren't exclusive. The idea of social cohesion is that we can embrace all of our heritages equally, without giving a priority to one over the other, and that bringing that together enriches who we are. And I know even from my own upbringing, I was quite lucky to make friends with people from all over the world that a generation prior wouldn't have been possible. And I think that it does change your perspective as well. And without a place like a museum, which are cultural spaces and cultural institutions dedicated to sharing these stories, the ignorance and unawareness of these different traditions and stories is there. So before we opened, there wasn't anywhere in Ireland you could go to learn about Ireland's own migration history, how Irish people interacted with others around the world, how they formed communities outside of Ireland, how those communities have linked back to Ireland and assisted Ireland in many ways as well. And then how, in turn, how inward migration into Ireland has changed how we perceive Irishness and our understandings of the island itself. So I think it's really important to keep having these conversations, to challenging these microaggressions that were referenced in the first film as well, to looking at people who are marginalized as well, the Afro-Turk communities in Anatolia who were living in kind of subsistence economies, on the fringes of society without anyone to champion them. Their identity kind of pulled in two directions, neither belonging there or elsewhere, and accepting that their culture was part of the national culture as well, as it was, that it didn't need to go one way or go another, that it was just quite important that it be preserved the way that they saw their culture. It was theirs and it's their decision to make. And cultural institutions like ourselves work with communities to make sure that's the case. It isn't a case of an authoritative body overhead kind of deciding who, gatekeeping on whose story should be told and how it should be presented. That's up to them themselves. So I think it was fantastic. I really enjoyed it. There was lots of food for thought from all three films. While I am living in Dublin now, I am a Carlow man, so I would actually probably shout for Mayo in the All Ireland this weekend. No offense, I think 5 in a row is enough for any county. So
go now, Nalini. I have to go, so I can't be part of this. I actually do have to go, so sorry.
No problem.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And Merry Christmas to you, Lord Mayor, and Happy New Year.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. So, and Rose, come to the Mansion House to look at the Sam when it comes over to us again. Bye.
Yeah, so well, I was just going to end with that point as well, that I think, yeah, the sport, food, we're part of a global migration network that was only formed a year and a half ago, which brings together 28 different museums and cultural sites all over the world that deal with migration. And the theme for our focus this year is food for thought, so food culture and how it can act as a kind of bridging point between communities. I think food, music, sports, they're really important for social cohesion in any society. So thank you, Lenani.
Thank you very much, Nathan. I really like the last word, food for thought. I'll keep that for our interaction next year. But just two things, maybe just to point out on some of the points that you raised, namely on the microaggression short film. I think what we really wanted to also showcase with the film producers is the fact that we usually focus a lot on bigger words, racism, hate speech, bigger things that would happen, that you would see on social media. Of course, it's very important, don't get me wrong, but there are also other aspects where someone would feel offended and it's not talked about. It's all these unconscious bias or reactions or behaviors that could affect someone. And I think we've all experienced it in a way. And what we call microaggressions. And we really wanted to emphasize on that so that people also start thinking about, oh, okay, not necessarily having to overthink of what you're going to say before, because that also becomes a problem otherwise, but just thinking and being careful of how the other person may react. If you're saying, oh, you actually speak good English. Well, yes, I do, because I was born speaking English. Thank you very much, you know. So I think that this was the message that we wanted to share in this very short film. And the second point, I think, linking up with what you said on this similar experience and rich experience that Irish nationals abroad have gone through and shared. I think this is the link with the fact that today we have a government also very keen and very interested and very open in a very objective and fair way to say, oh, we're actually very much interested to fund a project of a global migration academy, because we believe that as also a country who has been colonized as well and experienced a lot of maybe difficult experiences, we understand what it means to really, and we promote it in a way on the fact that we really need to be able to report properly on migration and migrants. So I think that's a nice link where we, Leonard and I, were able to really discuss with the Irish government and have them fund this, co-fund this really great initiative, which will be starting next year for the next 2 years. It will really involve any students, journalists, reporters wanting to just learn what it means, how to report, what investigative journalism means. How do you fact check? What are words that we all talk about, but we never know what it really means? Smuggling, trafficking, everyone apparently is a traffic person, not necessarily. So really going into, and hopefully the new waves of journalists and people that are interested in the area would be really more inclined to properly fact check, properly share, and seek people like you, Sharoz, and talk to you and want to tell your story in a way where it really depicts your life and your experience, and it shows your contribution to society. I'll stop there. I could continue talking forever, but I think it was extremely a very, very rich panel, a really interesting discussion that we had. We're pretty much at the end of our time here. So I'd like to thank you all. And the session will be recorded, so we'll also be sharing it on social media subsequently. I think I'll stop here and wish you all a very Merry Christmas, end of the year. I think it's needed. We needed to end this year and start a new year. So hopefully we'll start something afresh next year and continue this good work that we're all doing together. So thank you, Nathan, for hosting this event, and to all the panelists for taking the time to be here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Lenny.
Thank you so much. Really great evening. Thank you.
Thank you.